Hey folks, Fernando doing another video for the More Survivalist. This is going to be a bit of a longer video. Please have the patience for it. Sometimes you cannot go through an entire concept in a fast manner. You have to go into more details. You have to explain things a little bit more. Sometimes you have to dig deeper and scratch below the surface. You will find things that at first you didn't quite see. Now, I've done videos before about the entire Ukraine situation, how it is presented by some people in the right, how it's presented by some people in the left. Actually, by all people in the left all over the world are on the side of Russia. And it is so difficult to see all of the players, all of the interests at play here. Let's go through the basic stuff. Russia invaded Ukraine. They're bombing the crap out of the country. That is something you don't see anyone arguing. I mean, there are some nutcases trying to argue that this is all just, computer-generated graphics and all of these are crisis actors. But anyone somewhat connected with reality will admit, yes, Russia invaded Ukraine and is being bombed, and millions of people have been displaced out of their own country. That is one of those facts that we have to take into consideration. Are there interests here? Of course there are. Is the elite making money out of this? Of course they are. Is the man that you see there in the back, Vladimir Putin, part of that said elite? Of course. Many of his oligarchs that have money for him are also part of that? Yes. Is London full of Russian oligarchs and has been for many, many years? Of course. And this goes on. Are there interests in the United States in terms of the bipartisan system by which the Republican Party is always opposed to the Democratic Party? And this is one of those, at least in my opinion, this is where my own personal opinion comes into play. In my opinion, this is a false sense of choice, pretty much with both sides eventually doing the same thing. You see how Obama was one of the presidents that bombed the most people through drones. And this is a president from the Democratic Party that was supposed to be like the opposite of the warmongering right, correct? So there's this thing about pretending to be a difference and clashing, while at the end of the day, pretty much they all end up doing the same thing. There are differences, of course. There's differences in the way Trump handled things. There's differences in how Biden handles things. Biden, a man that is not making all that much decisions for himself, he's pretty much handled by the left. So it is quite complex, and this is an international crisis. I often see many Americans looking at this from their own perspective only. And you always have to keep your own interests in mind. You have to keep your own perspective in mind. But this is an international conflict that's a lot more complex than just how is this affecting me? Yeah, sure, you have to look at how this is affecting me, but not all root causes of everything. I'm using the Kamala Harris root causes actually in a correct sentence for a change here. You have to look at the root causes as of why is this happening? Are there other interests in play, or is the universe revolves around me only, or are there other things at play here? So we talked before about how the opinion of Tucker Carlson is suspicious, to say the least. So much cheerleading for a dictator. It is, at the very least, extremely suspicious. I've explained how I've seen that before so many times. In my own country, when authoritarian regime took over the country through democratic process, as it sometimes happens. If you look at Venezuela is a great example of how things can go extremely wrong, even if you start from a place of democracy. You convince people, this is the way we should be going, and you have a left-wing president in place, and as left-wing ideologists usually do, amass more and more power to an extreme where you end up with a dictator in government. So that's what happened in Venezuela. In Argentina, we came extremely close to that in most practical aspects. It is that even till this day, you have a puppet president that is, it used to be Alberto Fernandez. For those of you that, of course, don't know, Alberto Fernandez is the current president of Argentina. He used to be the secretary, like the butler of the actual president, Cristina Kirchner, when she was so intolerable that people could not stand her anymore in screen. She had her former employee come back to her circle, and he was presented as the president, but the entire country pretty much laughs at this idea. It's kind of like with Biden. Alberto Fernandez is not as old as Biden, but he is a man of no gut, of no backbone of any kind. He's one of his son is a transgender figure. I mean, this is a man with no backbone, with no morals, with nothing. He's just a yes man. He's been that his entire life. You actually see Klaus Schwab saying that Alberto Fernandez is one of his young leaders. No, Alberto Fernandez is not a leader of anything, and that's just one more little point to keep in mind. Klaus Schwab sometimes talks bullshit, and what things he says are not actually true, which shouldn't be much of a surprise. But it's interesting how when we want to believe something, no matter who says it, we believe it. When we don't want to believe something, even if we have it in front of our eyes, we choose to ignore it. Keep that in mind. Look, this could go on for hours. Now, one of the ways I try to summarize this, and I think this is, yes, of course, I'm always promoting my work, my books and such, but when I try to talk about this in this book, way before any of this happened, I did a small piece. The idea was having something super compact that people could, in a page, get the idea. Politics and media, okay? This is pretty much what you're looking at right now, and if you see on that's what it says there, remember, there are two sides to every story, and it is between those two that you shall find the truth. Okay, so listen to both sides. Now, some of you may immediately think, hey, Fernando, you're always bringing down the propaganda from Russia. Yes, of course I am, and you should as well. Propaganda in times of war should not be allowed. It is going against, it's a weapon of war. And if you are at war, and make no mistake, the West, the values we uphold, freedom, liberty, democracy, all of that is right now being attacked by people like Putin, who is a dictator, and see in China, who is also a dictator, and people like Maduro in Venezuela, also a dictator, Cristina Fernandez in Argentina, who has a lot of support from Putin over the years. It's not just a photograph. Over the years, China, Russia have been strong allies in South America and countries like Argentina and others, in Venezuela too. And the United States has been, letting that go on for way too long, in my opinion. So, all of these actors, what they have in common, left-wing dictators. That's always the case. So, you have to look at both sides of the coin. If you want to watch Russian propaganda, watch it. I've watched my fair share so as to get fed up with it. I already know what Russian propaganda is. I know what Russian propaganda is, even if others repeat it. You listen to it, yeah, that's word by word Russian propaganda. You take it as of what it is. Now, even though there are two sides to every coin and there's two sides to every story, not all stories and not all sides matter the same. If a known serial rapist, where you have the proof of it, there's overwhelming evidence that the man is a rapist, he rapes another woman, and the woman has her version of the events, and the rapist has his own, it's not that both sides have the same. The aspect of you'll find the truth between those two doesn't mean that it's somewhat in the middle, that both are somewhat right. That is a huge mistake. That is very, very naive to think. And the man I have here on the screen, Russell Brand, is that kind of person. I like a lot of what he's, just like I like a lot of what Tucker Carlson says many times. I agree with lots of the things he says. I also know when things just don't add up. Now, in the case of Russell Brand, I don't think he's a man that's being bought. I don't think he's being disingenuous. I think, though, he's a man that has lived a life that he's just not used to understand certain things about how evil, corrupt, and how manipulative some of these outlets can be at times. Russell Brand is an admitted more of a left-wing kind of guy. He's more of the left-wing side, correct? That does not mean that he's not trying to be as genuine and honest as he can. I absolutely believe that's his intent. Now, when I see some of the things he's been publishing lately, I see that he's on this side of Russia is something that, as I said before, not all sides are the same, and not all sides hold the same amount of truth. You see that he's going, they want war. Okay. And they're not Russian. Like, the war was caused by someone other than Russia. just because someone benefits or some of the main players in the world benefit from the war does not mean that the man that invaded Ukraine was Vladimir Putin. It wasn't even Russia. It was the dictator running Russia, Vladimir Putin, right here. Now, why is it that the things he says don't add up? I mean, he's always trying to be as objective as possible, and I absolutely respect that from him. But scratch that surface. You find what I'll explain right this moment. The sources he uses, and this is why I know he's trying to be honest in his approach. He quotes the sources. Have you bothered checking those sources? I did. I'll make this easy for you. One of the most used sources that Russell Brand uses all the time is Jacobin magazine. Go to Wikipedia. The first line that says Jacobin is an American socialist magazine based in New York. Okay, so it is a socialist magazine, and if you keep reading, they have this very interesting statement from notable contributors. Sungara has said he feels that all of our writers fit within a broad socialist tradition, so it is a socialist outlet. Russell Brand is using as a socialist outlet, right? And they have other people here. I have Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard, I like lots of the things she says, not others. The things I don't like fall very much in line with her ideology as a left-winger, as a socialist. So Tulsi Gabbard, she is a socialist, sides very much in the agenda with Bernie Sanders. You may like Bernie Sanders. You know, there's something that he says that makes sense. But I always keep in mind that he's a socialist. And I've suffered socialists enough to know that in spite of their best intentions, sometimes you have those, in spite of their not so great intentions, you have lots of that as well. Usually they are dictators for a reason. But the good socialists that try to, make the world better through their socialism, Tulsi Gabbard type of socialist, maybe even a Russell Brand type of left-wing guy, even though I think Russell Brand is a lot more genuine than Tulsi Gabbard in his approach to all of this, it just doesn't end up well. Socialism never fixes anything. It is just a lot. This is why you see it's Cuba side. One of the things you guys in the United States ignore is that all over the world, the left is on the side of Russia. All over the world. The right, anywhere in the world, other than the United States, is against Russia. It is only in the United States that you see elements of the right siding with Russia. Why? Maybe a number of reasons. But I think that 60%, there was a poll lately, and yeah, you take that with a huge grain of salt. 60% of both Democrats and Republicans are against Russia or siding with Ukraine. I think that's somewhat accurate. I see that in the comments and so on. But keep this in mind. It is only in the United States that you see this. Part of this may well be this idea of the bipartisan system that if Joe Biden is siding with Ukraine or pretending to side with Ukraine so as to save face in the international scene, you have to oppose that. So if Biden says we're against Russia, some elements on the Republican side will have to say, no, we're against that. At the same time, you also have to realize that the people that are behind Joe Biden are very much like Tulsi Gabbard. They're left-wingers. The people that are basically controlling the agenda of the United States right now are left-wingers. So in spite of all the talk about we're going to be doing this, we're going to be doing that, we're not going to be doing this, we're not going to be crossing this line. Are you going to be reacting if Putin throws nuclear bombs? We won't do anything. The no-fly zone, huge mess about the no-fly zone. How could you dare think of sending U.S. soldiers to fight for Ukraine? They're all a bunch of Nazis, Fernando. There's no boots on the ground of anything. There's no plane anywhere. There's no involvement, but people have been convinced to talk about this as if there already is. There's none of that. There's barely a minimum amount of help being sent by in the form of weapons, certain weapons, really nothing that's going to be making a huge difference in the long run. So there's more of a, let this beat down go down, I stay on the side. And, even people like, I want to show you this because this is quite interesting where you have this discussion. Sean Hannity presses Tulsi Gabbard on her Ukraine policy. Take a listen to what she says here.
Line. What is it exactly we are trying to achieve, and how does it best serve the interest of the American people?
She's very articulate. I like lots of the things she says. I know that she's a socialist at heart, and I have a huge problem with that because I've seen this destroy my own country. People with very bad intentions, people with good intentions. I've seen people justify, even when caught red-handed, and by being caught red-handed, I'm talking about the Kirchner government literally being caught in camera, throwing around bags full of money, like millions upon millions of US dollars in cash, piled up this high in tables around them, or literally thrown over walls to be hidden. And people with good intentions, socialists, left-wingers with good intentions, still try to justify that. It is like a religion. They will try to justify anything, even though it has no excuse. But keep listening to what she says.
Will it make our lives better? Will it improve them, or will it actually make it worse? And I think that's really the central question that our president of this country needs to answer.
You know, does the world, we can't be the world's policeman. You and I agree on that part. We can't.
Yes.
But however, we are a nation that has a conscience and a soul and a belief in natural law that rights come from God, not from governments. I think you agree with that part. And
yes.
When you see entire cities like Mariupol decimated, hospitals bombed out, maternity hospitals, schools bombed out, indiscriminate bombing of innocent men, women, and children. And you see women and children shot dead, bombed out in the streets.
I know you guys hate it when I do this, but I actually looked that city because sometimes you may think, oh, how was it before? Go and look it up. Go a couple years ago, look at all the YouTubers and influencers visiting that same city. It was beautiful. It was a green, lush, beautiful place. Now it's all burned to crap and bombed to pieces. Just want to mention that because some people will immediately think, oh, that's an image. It's been digitalized in a certain manner. It's using a filter. You can do a lot of that. Not to that extent. That is all bombed to crap.
And the cities of Ukraine, does America at least have a moral obligation to assist a country that's willing to fight for itself to defend their natural rights? Because that's what Reagan called the Reagan Doctrine.
The role that we have, and that frankly President Biden should have carried out from the get-go in this, and I've talked about this with you before, is doing all that we can to try to prevent this tragic war from happening in the first place. Try to prevent
I agree with that, but I'm looking at where we are now.
Lives from being lost.
But what you see with your own eyes, but what you see with your own eyes, and what we're showing every night, is there a moral obligation, and is it wise and strategically beneficial to the world, and including the United States, to stop this megalomaniac murdering thug right here, right now, with the Ukrainians willing to fight if they only have the weapons?
We have to look at the world as it exists in reality, not the world that we wish existed.
You see it?
And it is a
Tulsi, I'm asking a real question here.
No, I'm trying to answer your question. The cruelty is to try to pretend to the Ukrainian people that they are going to win in a war against a nuclear-armed country that it...
So give up. Surrender to Russia. That's what she's saying. Again, I've agreed so many times with lots of the things this woman has to say, but she's a socialist at heart. She believes that the regime from the left will eventually be better than what we have right now. I'm essentially opposed to that. I've seen it, how it never works. It's incredible, but some people have forgotten that socialism has never worked. If you look at Cuba, if you look at Venezuela, if you look at the destruction they've been causing in my own country, in Argentina, if you look at the destruction they've been causing in your own country, even after just a short period of time with a president that it's a shell of a man and is handled by the left, how has that worked out for you? You think that you have a lot of freedom in Russia? Are you crazy? No, of course you don't. You don't have freedom in Russia at all. You don't have freedom in North Korea. You don't have freedom in Cuba. You don't have freedom in any left-wing dictatorship. And that's what you see being defended right now by Tulsi Gabbard. She's smart. She's resourceful. She's very clever. But there's things you simply cannot defend no matter how smart you are. That's why Sean, you know what? There's no way of answering. I mean, she eventually just says, just give up. Let's not give these people a false sense of actually being able to win this war. Give up to Russia in a very polite, politically correct, and deceiving manner, I will say. But again,
is to try to pretend to the Ukrainian people that they are going to win in a war against a nuclear-armed country that is out-equipped, that has stronger equipment, more tanks, more bombs, more planes, more people, more everything in Russia. It's just not realistic. So what should have been done from the beginning is the same thing that needs to be done now, which is a negotiated outcome.
Wait a minute. Give them nothing because Russia has nukes and they might use them. That's your answer?
We've provided a tremendous amount of support to Ukraine, not only now but over the years, so that they have the ability to defend themselves, and the Ukrainian military and the people are putting up an incredibly strong.
Should we give them the weapons to win the war? If they're doing a great job, everybody acknowledges that. Should we give them all, and Europe too, give them the weapons if they're willing to fight for their country?
They can't win this.
She will not say that she stands with the people in Ukraine and want to defend their own country because she stands with Russia. Bought, paid for, true believer? I don't know. I'm more of the belief that she's a true believer in socialism. She believes that this is the way for the world. Guys, if you don't start realizing this, if you don't start seeing this, instead of having a knee-jerk reaction of, oh, Fernando has been so mean with Tucker Carlson, you have to understand what's going on because you will be screwed on a personal level, as a country. We're going to be screwed as human beings in general all over the world if people don't start waking up to this huge threat that we thought ended a long time ago. No, it was very much alive and well in different countries. Now it has spread through different systems all over the world, and you see it in the United States, and you see it in the White House. This is, and Tulsi Gabbard is at least more capable and smarter and more efficient than the clowns right now in the White House. But at the end of the day, in essence, she sides with the same thing. She must be very happy with all of the decisions coming out of the White House right now.
This war, Sean, this is the real world that we live in. It is not, it's not strategically possible to think that Ukraine is going to beat Russia. If you look at it, and then
so
it also is the question, what does winning look like?
Vladimir Putin, you're saying you fear Vladimir Putin would use a nuke. If he uses a nuke, the radiation fallout will impact NATO countries. That triggers Article 5. Do you believe in Article 5 of the NATO agreement?
I think the most responsible thing that our leaders, the United States, leaders of NATO, Ukraine, and Russia need to do right now is look at what the reality is.
So, I mean, basically give up, Ukraine, give up, Russia is more powerful than you, and because they are socialists and commies, I side with them. Do you see this? Let me know in the comments, just like when you guys disagree with me, let me know right now. Do you disagree with me? You don't see this? You really don't see this? You don't see this going on. Going back to what I was talking about in the beginning, when you look at what you have from people like Tulsi Gabbard, I think Russell Brand is a lot more honest. But his sources, whoever is doing the editing, whoever is working with him, they quote this. They use this, and people don't bother. They look at Russell Brand like I do so many times. I agree with 90% of the things he says. You know, of course, when he talked about the pandemic, when he talked about the special interests, when he talks about the elite, when he talks about the World Economic Forum, when he talks about all of this, I absolutely agree with him. Now, when something doesn't quite compute, when I see him pretty much taking the Tulsi Gabbard approach of things, and I know the guy is probably not trying to be disingenuous, but the sources he uses are, because he's using Jacobin, American Socialist Magazine. Okay, another source he uses for this topic specifically, Mint Press. What is Mint Press? It is a left-wing American online. Most of the sources he uses that are referenced to in his latest videos are from the left, and the left is siding with the regimes that you see around the world, like Russia, like China, like Venezuela. They will not go against each other, even though the right now in the United States says, man, what, you're not siding with Ukraine? No, those bastards, they're all a bunch of Nazis. Talking about that, it is so interesting. I was watching InfoWars. You love Alex Jones? Sure. I don't in particular, but I listen to what he has to say. Now, it is not the case right now, but I've seen the last few days that he's using Russian TV as a source. He's using Sputnik as a source. Those are Russian government outlets. Not only that, the approach he has in general is very much anti-Ukraine. Now, what I see him doing here in general is using it as a beating stick so as to crap on Biden. You're crapping on Biden because Biden is bought by Ukraine, which is ridiculous, but that's the stance taking. No, let me explain this for you guys. The United States is not bought by little third world countries or weak countries. It is the United States that uses these weak countries of, I'll give you this, you give me this kickback. I give you a few bucks, you give me back this percentage. This is how it works. You want my help, you do this. This is how countries are weaker end up being, taken advantage of, used, and you do your best as a president of a nation that is in that condition. You try to find a compromise so as to, if you are a patriotic leader, you try to do the best for your country. Sometimes you have to compromise a little bit. You have to get, you receive an X amount of money, which you absolutely need to keep your country alive and going in a desperate time. And they ask for a bit of money, you probably pay that. Yeah, that's what you do. That does not make you worse than Vladimir Putin. Now, the approach taken by Alex Jones, I assume it's because I don't know have they been bought. I don't know. Are they true socialist believers? I don't think that Alex Jones is a Tulsi Gabbard. I don't think he's a socialist. Is he the kind of person that makes idiotic, unfunded claims at times? Of course he is. Actually, he did that one such case quite recently with a good friend of mine, which was accused of the most stupid, ridiculous thing you could possibly believe on, and that came straight out of the mouth of Alex Jones. So yes, he says stupid crap quite often. He's sometimes right as well, and that is also valuable. But there's no way of avoiding. Look at this. This kind of a comic cartoon, a Nazi from Ukraine, like Ukrainians are all of a sudden all Nazis. The Azov Battalion, for you guys that don't know, these are guys that are nationalistic and looking to protect their borders. Do you not have that in the United States? You don't have the Proud Boys. Have the Proud Boys not be accused of being Nazis themselves? Are the Proud Boys Nazis? Of course not. Are there maybe a few Nazis among them? I assume it is very likable. Yes, it is very likely, very possible. Now, that does not mean, the Azov Battalion has been, it's a very dedicated anti-Russian battalion. And they've been fighting in the front line, literally, not in the commie, woke, cultural war sense. Literally, nationalist people fighting against an enemy they hate that happens to be invading their country as well. So, of course, and that... I think there was a percent that like 10% of the few thousand of the battalion identify themselves as far right wingers or nationalists or whatever. But man, it is a battalion actively fighting an invader. The idea that the entire country should suffer Russia because they're all a bunch of Nazis, it is stupid. It's simply not true. Nazis, that was World War II. Now, if you have the white supremacist woke counterattack, or you racist, if you want to fall for that, be my guest, go for it. But understand that it's really not true. If you look at the numbers, it is just more of the lies that come from the left. Lies like this. Jacobin, the source used by Russell Brand. Why did Putin decide to invade Ukraine? Long explanation as, Putin decided to invade Ukraine because he was being threatened. NATO was about to overtake Russia. NATO was planning on invading Russia any day now. NATO was going to be... Is NATO... a fantastic source of income for the elites? Of course it is. Is NATO a fantastic source of income for the United States? Of course it is. The United States is a country that strongly bases its economy on war. So of course there's a strong interest here. That does not mean that Ukrainian people are any less of a victim. Look at more of the publications from Jacobin. This is the kind of objective journalism that you get from the magazine and the publication, the source, the outlet that Russell Brand is using. The right is still the enemy of freedom. Do you see it, or don't you understand that these people are true believers in that the right is the enemy of freedom? This is literally what they say. This is literally what they believe. This is literally what people like Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson probably has other interests. I'm pretty sure I know which one of those are. Giving everything he said before. Now, Tulsi Gabbard, that's different. Her approach has always been different. Always socialist at heart. True believer. I mean, I respect that. I don't agree with you. I think that you will be bringing misery to the entire world with your opinions and your agenda. And if you get your way with what you want for us, we are all screwed. We all end up living like Argentina, like Cuba, like Russia, like North Korea. If you are siding with a dictator, I think that's going to be bad for all of us. This is one more of the things that a guy like Russell Brand, which is, he seems like a very likable guy. He's funny. He's a very good comedian, and I have a blast. And I'm still watching lots of the things he says. Now, I've got to the point where I know the bullshit enough because I've suffered so much over the years that sometimes I don't even bother. When with a title like this, they won war and they're not Russian, like, okay, yeah, I don't even have to click on it to know that the source you're going to be using is going to be a left-wing outlet, a socialist or a left-wing outlet or a woke outlet that is anti-West, that's trying to defend Putin and his invasion of Ukraine. So this is where we are, guys, right now. And it's, this is not only about Ukraine. If you've been patient enough, here's a little gem for you. This is the kind of thing that's also going to be used to destroy you as middle-class Americans, right? Because that's what socialists do. In spite of their good intentions sometimes, or in spite of their not so good intentions, but socialists always end up destroying your quality of life, destroy the middle class. Everyone becomes the same damn poor, and you have a ruling elite which they will justify, just like Tulsi Gabbard is doing right now, just like the sources that Russell Brand uses. They will justify it because they believe that the right is the enemy of freedom, and the solution is more socialism, more communism for everyone. That's how we'll have a fair world finally. And I don't believe that's true. If you do believe that's true, if you believe the communist utopia, let me know. I think you're wrong. I'm pretty sure you're wrong. But yeah, that is a matter of opinion. You may stand wherever you stand. Now, don't be deceived to thinking anything else. Don't be deceived into thinking that's anything else rather than it is, because there's two sides to every story. One side may be as right as the other at times. That's sometimes the case. There's some cases where you have the rapist, you have the murderer, you have the dictator, and you have the victim. All right. So know what you're dealing with and learn to be as objective as possible and try to scratch, and see what's beneath that surface. See you on the next video, folks. Take care.